The house felt wrong without her. Every morning, Marcus would wake to the cold emptiness beside him, expecting to hear Sarah's voice calling from the kitchen, only to remember she was gone. Vanished during a routine trip to the grocery store 3 months ago. No body, no ransom note, no closure. Just an abandoned car in the parking lot and a gaping hole in their lives that swallowed everything whole. Their 7-year-old daughter Emma had stopped speaking entirely. She'd wander through the rooms like a ghost herself, clutching her mother's cardigan, waiting for a miracle that never came. Marcus had become a shadow of the man he once was, going through the motions of parenthood while drowning in unanswered questions. The police had leads that went nowhere. Friends offered sympathy that felt hollow. Life, cruelly, continued forward while his remained suspended in that terrible moment of not knowing. Then came the dog. It started on a Tuesday morning. Marcus was staring into his coffee, willing himself to feel something other than the numbness that had become his constant companion, when he heard it, a gentle but insistent tapping on the sliding glass door that led to their backyard. He looked up to see a large German shepherd sitting patiently on the deck, its paw raised, tapping the glass with a precision that seemed almost human. "Not now," Marcus muttered, assuming it was a stray. He returned to his coffee, but the tapping continued. Rhythmic, purposeful. Emma appeared in the doorway, her eyes, Sarah's eyes, fixed on the dog with the first hint of interest he'd seen in months. The dog came back the next morning. And the next. Always at 7:15, always the same deliberate tapping. Marcus tried ignoring it, but Emma had begun sitting by the door, watching the animal with an intensity that both worried and intrigued him. On the 5th day, he finally opened the door. The German shepherd didn't bound inside or bark. It simply stood, turned, and looked back at Marcus as if to say, "Follow me." Then it walked to the edge of the deck and waited. "This is insane," Marcus said aloud. But Emma was already putting on her shoes. They followed the dog through the neighborhood, Marcus's heart pounding with equal parts skepticism and something he'd almost forgotten, hope. The animal led them down familiar streets, then turned onto a path Marcus rarely took, one that wound through a wooded area behind the elementary school. The dog moved with purpose, occasionally glancing back to ensure they were following. After 20 minutes, they emerged at a small clearing Marcus had never noticed before. There sat a weathered trailer home, its windows covered with faded curtains. The dog walked to the front door and sat, waiting. Marcus's phone was already in his hand, ready to call 911, when the door opened. An elderly woman stood there, rail-thin with silver hair and eyes that held oceans of sorrow. She looked at Marcus, then at Emma, and her face crumpled. "You came," she whispered. "Kaiser brought you. I prayed he would. Who are you?" Marcus demanded, instinctively pulling Emma closer. "My name is Ruth," she said, her voice trembling. "And I know where your wife is." The world tilted. Marcus felt his knees weaken, felt Emma's small hand tighten around his. "What did you say?" Ruth's eyes filled with tears. "Please, come inside. There's so much I need to tell you, and we don't have much time." The interior of the trailer was sparse but clean, filled with photographs of a young man in military uniform. Ruth gestured to a worn couch, and Marcus sat, feeling as though he were watching himself from a distance. Emma remained pressed against his side. "My son, Daniel," Ruth began, pointing to the photographs, "came back from Afghanistan. Changed. The war followed him home in ways I couldn't reach. He started using drugs, got involved with dangerous people." Her voice broke. "A few months ago, he fell in with a group running a trafficking operation. They needed places to hold people before moving them." Marcus's blood turned to ice. "There's an abandoned warehouse on Riverside, near the old textile factory. I overheard Daniel on the phone one night, talking about a woman they were keeping there, a woman with a 7-year-old daughter and a husband who was a software engineer. He mentioned your name, Marcus." The room spun. "Why didn't you go to the police?" "Because he's my son," Ruth sobbed. "I know that makes me a coward, a monster. But after everything he'd been through, I couldn't be the one to send him to prison. I told myself I'd find another way. I've been gathering information, trying to figure out how to get her out without implicating Daniel, but I've been too afraid, too selfish." She looked at Emma with naked guilt. Then Kaiser started disappearing every morning. He was Daniel's service dog, the only thing that kept him tethered to humanity. "When I followed Kaiser one day, I saw him at your house, tapping on your window. He knew. Dogs know. Marcus was already standing, his phone out. I'm calling the police right now. Wait, Ruth grabbed his arm with surprising strength. The warehouse is being cleared out tonight. They move locations every few weeks. If you call the police now, by the time they get a warrant and organize a raid, it'll be too late. They'll move everyone, and you'll never find Sarah. Then what am I supposed to do? Ruth pulled out a crumpled piece of paper with an address and a crude map. Daniel's leaving for a supply run at 8 tonight. The warehouse will have minimal guards for about an hour. I've been there twice, pretending to bring Daniel food. I know the layout. There's a side entrance that's usually left unlocked. Marcus stared at this broken woman, this stranger who'd held his wife's fate in her hands for months. Rage warred with desperation. You're asking me to trust you. No, Ruth said quietly. I'm asking you to save your wife. What you do with me afterward, I deserve all of it. That night, Marcus stood outside the warehouse with Ruth's map, his phone set to dial 911 with one press, and a fear so profound it threatened to crush him. He'd left Emma with his sister, promising he'd bring Mommy home. Ruth had insisted on coming, guiding him to the unlocked entrance with Kaiser by her side. The warehouse was exactly as she'd described, a labyrinth of shipping containers and makeshift walls. Ruth led him through the darkness to a reinforced door with a simple padlock. She produced a key, her hands shaking so badly Marcus had to take it from her. Inside, in a room that smelled of despair and broken promises, he found her. Sarah was thinner, her eyes hollow, but alive. When she saw him, she couldn't even cry, just reached for him with trembling hands as he cut through her restraints. There were others there too, 6 women and 2 men, all prisoners of the same nightmare. Marcus called 911 the moment they were outside. The police raid that followed led to 14 arrests, including Daniel, and the dismantling of a trafficking network that had operated for over 2 years. Ruth was arrested as an accessory but later received a reduced sentence in exchange for her testimony. Her cooperation helped authorities rescue 17 more victims from other locations. 6 months later, Marcus stood in his backyard watching Emma throw a ball for Kaiser, who'd been officially adopted into their family after Ruth requested it from jail. Sarah stood beside him, her hand in his, both of them still healing but together. She'd asked him once how he'd found her, and he'd told her about the dog that wouldn't stop tapping on their window, about the elderly woman whose guilt had finally outweighed her fear, about the unexpected humanity that could exist even in the darkest places. Sarah had wept then, for Ruth's son who'd lost himself to demons he couldn't fight, for Ruth who'd loved him despite his sins, for all the broken pieces that somehow, impossibly, had come together to bring her home. Do you think she'll be okay? Sarah asked, watching Kaiser play. Marcus pulled her closer. I think she did the hardest thing anyone can do, she chose what was right over what was easy. That counts for something. Inside the house, Marcus's phone buzzed with a message. It was from Ruth, sent from prison. How's Kaiser? How's Emma? Tell them I think of them every day. Marcus showed Sarah, and together they composed a reply. They're healing. We all are. Thank you for finding your courage when it mattered most. Because in the end, that's what kindness sometimes requires, not grand gestures or easy choices, but the painful, selfless decision to do what's right even when it costs you everything. And sometimes, the most profound humanity comes not from those who've never fallen, but from those who find the strength to stand back up and face the consequences of their failures. The German shepherd continued his morning routine, though now he tapped on the window just to be let out for breakfast. Some habits, Marcus figured, were worth keeping, especially those that had once saved everything.